In the heart of Houston, a city of diversity and resilience, a story unfolds, a story of unsung heroes, visionaries, and trailblazers, a story of Latinos rising in the digital age. From doctors saving lives in our hospitals to the artists painting the future and the entrepreneurs building legacies, these voices are leading the way, breaking boundaries and redefining what it means to be Latino in America. Our culture, our stories, our people, each one with a journey that touches the heart and inspires the soul. From the pages of history to the screens of today, Viva Magazine Live continues its legacy of uplifting the Latino community and telling the stories that need to be heard. Viva Magazine Live isn't just a show, it's a movement, a celebration of Latino excellence, and a call to action for the next generation to fulfill their hopes and dreams and become an active part of the Latino voice. Join us as we tell the stories that inspire, unite, and elevate. Together we can ensure these voices are heard loud and clear. We invite you to be part of something bigger. Support Viva Magazine Live and make history with us. Support the vision and invest in our community. Hola Houston, I'm your host Blanca Blanco, and welcome to Viva Magazine Live. This is a place where we celebrate the movers and the shakers and trailblazers of the vibrant Latino community. And today we're spotlighting Mr. Ruben Perez, who just recently retired from the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and before that he was with the U.S. Attorney's Office. This man was on the front lines fighting crime from A to Z, and most notably fighting against human trafficking. So we're going to be right back. We're going to pause from a word from our sponsors. Welcome back. Ruben, thank you so much for being on the show today. And we're just going to dive right in. And I see you sitting here today, very erect, straight, and everything. But I understand that when you were younger, you were in a major accident and you were incapacitated for about 13 months. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, when I was 16 years old, I was a musician. I was a saxophone player with Sisto Sanchez and the Broken Hearts, a band out of Seguin, Texas. We were coming back from a gig from Abilene, heading back to Seguin. And unfortunately, the driver fell asleep and the van which we were in flipped over. The fellow who was sitting next to me was a singer, Sisto. We both flew out of the side panels of the van, and he got killed.
Oh,
and
so
I got hurt very badly.
Yeah.
Shattered my right leg. And I was in traction for 3 months and a body cast for 10 months.
Oh my God.
And then I was on crutches for about 2.5 years.
Oh my God. So how did you learn to walk again? I mean, I'm sure you had a tremendous amount of therapy.
Well, actually back in the day, that was back in 1967.
Yes.
We did not have therapy. Unfortunately, we did not have health insurance either.
Your family didn't have medical insurance. So how was that for you and your family at the time?
Very, very trying. My dad's a barber, was a barber, limited income, but he was a family man.
Yeah.
And he worked and worked and worked and worked. And he was able to provide for me staying in the hospital.
Yeah.
But for him and my mom and some family support and community support, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure it was a very trying time for your family, and you survived it. And I am sure at the time, even though back then we look at it today and it didn't seem like a lot of money, but back then it was a lot of money for you and your family.
It was a lot of money. My parents had to mortgage our house in order for me to be provided medical coverage.
Yeah.
It was very trying.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
At a very tender age of 16, kind of was a very mature thing to happen to me.
Right.
Because at 16, I realized how life can be so short.
Right.
So we have to appreciate life every day.
Yeah, you count your blessings. I mean, at a young age, at 16 years old, you realize that you can get past it one way or another because you're young and you have that wherewithal to to move forward.
I was a junior in high school, and unfortunately, I missed all my junior year and all my senior year of high school.
Wow.
So I went back 2 years later and still graduated from high school. So when I speak at universities, high schools, and I hear kids telling me all these issues about not being able to succeed, I say, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I was out of high school for 2 years on my back.
Right.
And I was still able to go back and persevere and graduate
And
from
they
high
didn't
school.
have internet back then that you could do it online, right?
No internet. No internet.
Okay, well, we're here, and we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, the Gonzalez Law Group, your law group for life. Welcome back, Houston, and we're talking with Ruben Perez and the adversities that he encountered as a young man. I can't even imagine that you learned to walk again, and here you are.
Well, you know, I really strongly feel that, yes, it was an adverse time, but I think God spared me to serve my fellow mankind.
That's right.
Because Sisto was sitting right next to me. I could have been sitting next to him, or been sitting where he was sitting, and I could have gotten killed.
Yes, I know a little bit about that. Your father told you something about sitting in a van, did he not? What was that?
Well, all the time that I played with that band, he would always tell me to sit on the side that didn't have any doors.
Okay.
So I would always sit right by the side of the van that did not have any doors. But that particular night, we had a new band player, a new bass player. And when we finished the booking, I went to go sit in my place where my dad would always tell me to sit.
Right.
And this fellow was there. And I said, guy, that's been my seat for like 3 years.
So
Tonight you can have it, but tomorrow, that's my seat. He said, okay. So instead of sitting there, I sat in the middle, and Sisto sat to my right.
Yes.
And that night after the accident, the fellow who took my seat had a busted lip, and I wound up getting hurt really badly.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, Sisto passed away.
This leads me to the next question. You're saying you had a purpose to serve your community, and you did. I understand that you helped a Mexican community to get water to their homes. We always think of water as a natural right, that we all should have water, correct? So tell me a little bit about this community. What year was it, and was it here in the United States?
It happened in Guadalupe County, Texas. Seguin is the county seat.
I can't imagine not having water. What year was that?
1974.
1974.
I was in college at Southwest Texas State University, and I was doing an internship with a community action agency. And the first day I reported to the community action agency, the director said, I want you to accompany this fella to this community in Guadalupe County, and it's called Galejin. And they don't have any running water. I said, what? They don't have any running water. I said, like potable water?
Galejin.
Galejin. And I said, no running water. And I was just shocked.
So they didn't have water piped into their homes like we have today?
Correct. Yeah. There was a water company, and there was a water line that stopped 1.2 miles from that community.
Right.
And it was 20 Mexican-American families and 1 German family. So when I arrived at the location, the leader of the community was an elderly gentleman. I get there and I explain to him in Spanish that I'm there to see if I can get him potable water. And he says, the first thing you need to do is get out of here.
Oh, he ran you off.
I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, I just got here. He says, people have been trying to get us water for years, and then never come through. It hadn't happened. He says, one lady came to get us a garden. I said, how the heck can we get a garden? We don't even have water.
Right.
So I said, well, give me a break. Let me have a chance. Let me see what I can do.
Exactly.
And I worked, and then I went and spoke to the company that was 2.2 miles away, and they said, no, we're not going to get them any water, because if we provided water, they probably wouldn't even pay their bills. So no, wait a minute.
So it was all about money at the time. It seems like anyway.
Wait a minute. You can't do that. I said, I did some research. You are funded federally, so therefore you can't discriminate against anybody. And by you saying you're not going to provide water to them,
right?
It sounds like you're discriminating because of their ethnicity. Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I said, well, bottom line is, if we're able to get some water, you've got to extend the water line.
Right.
He said, well, let's see if you can come up with the money. So I was able to go to different agencies, and finally we were able to put together $12,000.
And that was a lot of money back then.
Oh, a lot of
12,000.
money,
Right.
a lot of money. And so I went to like the local church, and then I rode Washington. They gave us like 2,500. I went to the Elks Club, the Lions Club, and every time I'd go to one club, they would want to raise the ante as far as how much they were going to give. They wanted to give more than the other club.
They were in competition
yes,
with each
so I
other.
was
Well,
able
that
to-
was good for y'all, right?
Oh, it was. We were able to put, I think it was $12,000.
Yeah.
And then we were able to extend the water line and get them running water.
Yeah.
And the story behind that is that I didn't know that a community existed. So when I got home that night, I told my parents about it.
Yes.
And my parents go, oh yeah, when we were kids, we used to pick cotton, and we used to deliver the cotton to a gin that was owned by this German fellow named Gale. That's why the community was called Gale Gin.
I got it, yeah.
So they knew all about it.
Yeah.
Of course,
And we
I
didn't.
had no idea.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So, how was that for those folks? I mean, have you gone back? How was it for the folks to get water for the first time, and how are they doing now?
When we finally got the water extended to them, remember I said I was a musician.
Yeah.
I was able to contact the local band that I played with, and they provided music for a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I went to the local funeral home, and they provided the tents, and I went to the local city government. They provided the chairs and the seats, not the chairs and the seats, the chairs and the tables. And then I went to the local Tyson company. They provided the fryers. I went to the local grocery store. They provided all the
Got the whole community.
We had a pachanga, a big, and of course all the media was there,
Yes.
all the politicians were
Of
there.
course.
So we had a big celebration.
That is awesome.
Coincidentally, I spoke to a fella maybe about a month ago who was in that community, and he went, you know, many years ago, there was this young man who provided water to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to that fella. And the guy goes, really?
Yeah.
He's a lawyer in Houston. No kidding.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's coincidence.
you.
That was about a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How big? Isn't
Yeah.
that something?
Yeah.
So, so the community is doing well today.
Yes.
It's still Galejan.
Still got legend.
And it's grown. I'm sure they had more than 20
Well,
families now.
Again, coincidentally, maybe about a couple of months ago, my wife and I'm from that area. We were driving by and said, hey, let's go by Gale.
Yeah.
And it's still a little community.
Yeah,
It's still, you know, it hasn't grown much, quite frankly.
Yes.
But it's still,
But,
it's still
but they
there.
got water.
Oh,
That was-
yes,
That
yep.
was important.
Yes.
So let me ask you this question, Ruben. Is that what drove you to law school? Doing this community service? Because you did say that God did have a purpose for you.
Actually, I've been wanting to be a lawyer since I was a kid.
I see.
Since I was little, I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why, quite frankly, but I wanted to be a
Yeah.
lawyer. And growing up in a hood, growing up in the barrio, there were a lot of naysayers, a lot of doubting Thomases.
Sure. Oh, of course.
Yeah, no, hombre,
Yeah.
he wants to be a lawyer.
Okay.
Nah, puro vato, he's not going to be a lawyer.
Puro vato.
And I just had this drive to be a lawyer.
Yes.
Now, was a police officer, and it was there in Seguin. He made a traffic stop, and the person who he stopped shot him in the chest and wound up.
Oh my God, I'm sorry
and
to
then,
hear that.
Yeah, and my uncle
so
chased
sorry.
him, and my uncle killed the guy that shot him.
Yeah.
So that made a big impression on me.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason that I always wanted to be a prosecutor. I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I think that episode, that incident,
Yeah.
my uncle was my hero. And,
I'm sure that made headline news. I'm
oh,
sure it
God,
was
yeah,
all
yes.
over. Yeah. One of the biggest social issues affecting us today is human trafficking. What were the factors that led you to be prosecuting attorney against human trafficking? What led you to that?
Well, actually, President Bush, George W.,
Yeah.
ordered the Department of Justice to do a big, massive effort to combat human trafficking. So they decided to do task forces all over the country. And I was one of the founding members of the Human Trafficking Rescue Alliance, which was a combination of city, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, along with NGOs, non-government organizations,
Right.
to put together this task force to combat human trafficking.
Right.
And I did the international human trafficking prosecutions. I'm bilingual. And oftentimes people from other parts of the country would say, well, we don't have a problem in our part of the country. And I say, you do have a problem, but we sometimes are known as the human trafficking capital of the world. I disagree with that.
Yeah. You're
We're the-
talking about Houston, Texas.
Yes.
Correct. Uh-huh.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
We're the human trafficking prosecution capital of the world.
Yeah.
Because we prosecute these
Right.
cases. A lot of times in other parts of the country, they're not prosecuted as aggressively as it's done here in Houston.
As you have. Well, I understand that you prosecuted one of the biggest human trafficking cases in the nation. Something like 120 women were rescued.
Correct.
Can you tell me about that? How did all that come to play?
Well, it was an organization based out of El Salvador, where they would bring young women to the U.S. and tell them that they're going to be put in as waitresses, as domestic help, perhaps in car washes. But once they got here, they would put them into situations involving brothels and prostitution, so they would enslave them. So we got wind of this and we investigated that case, and we were able to rescue about 120 young women from that organization.
Was going back to that, that brings a question to mind about, was this, they were, you know, in Houston they were called like pony bars, is that what they were called, where women would, you know, go to these, well, they would be at the bars and the men would go there and they would, is that what they were paid to do?
Sometimes, there's different ways to enslave women. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical force. It can be fraud, it can be coercion. Because sometimes what they'll do, they'll bring them into
prostitution and that
they'll bring them into the country, and then they'll put them in compromising positions. For example, they may take their picture in a compromising situation and say, look, if you don't continue to do what I say, I'm going to send this to your parents, your grandparents back home.
Oh, I see.
And that's intimidate them and manipulate them and be able to coerce them into doing what they want them to do. And human trafficking can be very, very lucrative.
Yes.
Because think about this. If you import, a drug smuggler imports a kilo of cocaine, okay? Once that kilo is used up, it's gone. There's no more value. A human being can be brought over, they can be enslaved. So long as that person is healthy, they can be used over and over and over. So oftentimes a human being is more lucrative than
it's more valuable.
Well, it's more sustainable. It can be a recyclable merchandise.
Merchandise, my God. So I know that you prosecuted that case. It was U.S. versus
United States versus Tencha, which is the
Hortensia Medeles Arguello, And how many women and children did you rescue at that time?
Now, at that time, that was a case where we really don't know how many people we affected, because it was a brothel that was it was called Las Palmas.
Yes.
It was off Telephone Road. I know that in that particular case, we went to trial in federal court, and 12 little girls testified.
Wow.
Just 12.
How old were they, Ruben?
They ranged anywhere from 14 all the way to the early 20s.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that particular case, Tencha and her organization, it was a lot of family members. So it was we indicted like 15 family members.
So it was a whole family involved in this human trafficking.
And very lucrative.
Yeah.
A lot of money was made. But initially, when Tencha would put these girls into the brothel, a lot of the girls would escape. So it was very, very hard to maintain that organization. So what she did then, she contracted with pimps. The pimps would provide the girls to the brothel. So the pimps were responsible for keeping the girls there. So then Tencha and her organization would split the proceeds with the pimps.
I see.
So they made a lot of money, a lot of money. And we were able to prosecute her and her organization. Everybody went to prison. Tencha got life in prison. And in federal prison, when I say life in prison, they take you out in a box.
Right.
I mean, you spend the rest of your life in prison.
We're going to take a quick break right now and hear a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Viva Magazine Live, and we're interviewing Ruben Perez, who is a retired prosecutor, and we were talking about this lovely painting of a leaf tree that was given to him as a token of appreciation for the rescue of several women and children that he had in a particular case. Ruben, tell us about this lovely painting that you got.
This particular painting that I'm going to display right here is a painting that I received from 12 little girls who testified in the Tencha case.
Right.
They were terrified. They didn't want to testify. They were scared.
I'm sure.
Very scared. But when they found out that the person we were prosecuting, Tencha, said that they were liars, that all this didn't happen. That kind of upset them.
Yes.
So they came forward to testify. But still, you know, they weren't quite ready to
And what were the ages, Ruben, from what age to what age?
14 to 20.
Okay.
You know, it was in that age group.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, they testified, terrified. But at the end of the trial, an agent shows up in my office with this painting
Yes.
right here. And
It's a beautiful painting.
yes, and my wife and kids were able to put it in a shadow box, but initially it came just as this canvas painting. And as I said, there were 12 little girls who testified. There's 12 dots on this tree that they painted, and it's the freedom and justice you fought for us has given us new life.
It's awesome, Ruben. It's beautiful.
Yes.
And what do the dots represent?
Well,
on that?
the agent says, you know, these 12 dots are each little girl's thumbprint.
Isn't that something?
Oh
Oh,
my
my God.
Even today, this has been a while since I received it. It's still...
How does that make you feel, Ruben? Wow. What an accomplishment to
Yeah.
save lives like that. That is awesome.
It's still very, very...
Emotional.
yeah, because... excuse me. But
Yeah,
anyway...
No problem. We understand. Yes.
But anyway, you know, my wife and kids had it framed, and it's been hanging in my office. It hangs in my office, and
Yes.
it's just fuel to keep going.
Yeah, of course. You got something to look forward to and a purpose in life.
Yes.
That's awesome.
But you know, I keep saying that I'm a retired prosecutor. I was a...
I don't think you're going to retire.
No, I was a DA from 81. Actually, I was an assistant city attorney from 80 to 81.
Yeah.
Prosecuting Class C misdemeanors from 81 to 92. I was a Harris County DA. And then in 92, I went to the feds.
Yeah.
And I was gone for 25 years. And then I came back in 2017. And I just retired from the county
Yes.
in this past Friday. But I still have a lot of gas left in the tank.
Sure. I think so too.
So I'm going to take off, you know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then I'll go into private practice and,
Yes.
and still continue to help people.
Yeah. And I know you will. So, for those of you that don't know, what is the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking? And we're going to take a short break, and Ruben Perez is going to tell us all about the differences. Welcome back to Viva Magazine Live, and here we are with Ruben Perez, and he's going to tell us the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. Ruben, tell us that difference.
Well, in human smuggling, what happens is basically a contract between the person being smuggled and the smuggler. It's a contract saying, look, the smuggler is going to get paid by the smugglee X number of dollars,
Right.
and then they're going to bring them to the U.S., and once they hit the U.S., the contract's over because
Yeah,
they've
they
completed
did
their
job.
contract.
Right.
Okay.
So they need to get paid.
Yes.
Okay.
Human trafficking is a situation where people aren't necessarily brought into the country. They can be here already,
Yes.
but they're enslaved. It's a trafficking situation where they're held against their will by force, fraud, or coercion. It can be
Is it
labor.
more serious, or they're both the same? Are they just as serious one and the other, or are they?
Well, in the smuggling situation, the person being smuggled isn't really a victim. In
Yeah.
fact, legally, they're violating the law.
Right.
They're entering our country against. They're entering our country illegally. So
Right.
that's a crime itself. Trafficking is a situation where the people are being used against their will, basically.
Got it.
So that's a human trafficking situation. Now, human smuggling situation can turn into a human trafficking situation.
Okay, yeah.
By that I mean, we had a case where people were being smuggled into the U.S. and then they had a safe house in McAllen. But in McAllen, the smugglers let some of the girls go further north. The pretty ones they kept in McAllen against their will.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then that case became a human trafficking out of a human smuggling
I
situation.
see. Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Well, you make it very, very clear, because we kind of entwine those together, but they could be, because they could be smuggled and then turned into a human traffic.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that for us. So if you see anything like that, if you see something, say something. And where can they call if they see anything like that?
That's such a great point. If you see something, say something. It's not going to cost you any money to call.
Right.
The number to call is 888-3737, 888. And the reason we did that is it's easy to remember. 888-3737, 888. Or you can also call the local police department. Call anybody.
Yeah.
We've had situations where somebody may have called and said, I see something that doesn't smell right. We check into it. Nothing happens. So what?
Yeah.
Didn't cost you anything.
So,
you might have saved a life.
When people see goings on in your neighborhood, like going and coming, people coming and going, like a lot of trafficking going on. Is that kind of like a signal maybe? Or,
it could be.
It could
What
be. Are the signals that people need to look for? I mean, a lot of different cars and, because sometimes the neighbors do look into that.
Yeah, so, we've had situations where maybe there's a trailer house in the back of a place and there's a lot of people in there and vans come in the morning.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't smell right, just call the police.
Right.
It's not going to cost you anything to call.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there you have it, my friends. Ruben, thank you so much for your inspiring work and for sharing your stories. And of course, I know that I know from the bottom of my heart that you may be retired, but I don't think you're going to be retired. I think you're going to still continue to do God's work, and that is what you're here to do.
Acuérdate, no te desesperes, que aquí está Pérez.
That's right. No te desesperes porque aquí está Ruben Perez. Okay. Thank you very much, viewers, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Viva Magazine Live. Hasta luego, Houston.